partnership that has been a cornerstone in Latin America for decades is now suddenly on the brink of completely falling apart. Today, we're diving deep into the geopolitical firestorm that's erupted between Colombia and the United States and what it all means for you, for global investors who are watching this all unfold. All right, let's get right into it. And it all seemed to kick off with these incredibly direct, personal words from the U.S. administration. This wasn't just some political jab. This was really the opening shot in a high-stakes showdown that's putting a truly historic partnership in serious jeopardy. So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to look at how this 70-year alliance is crumbling. Then we'll talk about the immediate shockwaves hitting the market. From there, we'll get into a defense plan for investors, hunt for some new opportunities, and finally, zoom out and ask, what is the next big move on the global chessboard? Okay, so to really understand what a big deal this is, we first have to appreciate just how deep the ties between these two countries actually go. We're talking about a foundation that was built generations ago. This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? This whole alliance kicked off way back in 1952. It got even stronger during Plan Colombia in the 90s and 2000s, with huge military cooperation. And now, there's talk of expelling U.S. military personnel. This isn't just a bump in the road. We're looking at a potential full stop to over 70 years of strategic partnership. It's the end of an era, potentially. So what was the spark that lit the fuse? Well, according to the source material, the crisis was directly triggered by a series of very pointed, very personal actions from the U.S. side. We're talking about suspended aid, new sanctions, and even adding President Petro and his family to the Clinton list. And just so you know, that is a U.S. blacklist for people and companies allegedly tied to international drug trafficking. So, yeah, a huge deal. And boom, here's the first tangible hit, $708 million. That's the amount of U.S. aid that was suspended. This wasn't just a diplomatic warning shot. This was a massive financial blow that sent a very clear, very loud signal to the markets and really set the stage for all the volatility we're seeing now. So, how does all this political drama actually affect the markets? Because let's be real, this is where it stops being just a headline and starts creating real risk that could hit your portfolio. Okay, before we go any further, we got to talk about this key concept, the geopolitical risk premium. Think of it like a price tag for uncertainty. When the political situation in a country gets shaky, investors get nervous. So to make it worth their while to keep their money there, they demand a higher potential return. And right now, for anyone holding Colombian assets, that price tag is getting higher and higher. The source material really boils this down to three big impacts for investors. First up, you've got broad market risk. We're talking stocks, bonds, the Colombian peso. They're all on a roller coaster right now. Second, there's a direct hit to the defense sector. Think big names like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Their contracts are now at risk. But then, and this is fascinating, a totally new and unexpected opportunity is popping up. President Petro is planning to fight these sanctions in U.S. courts, which is creating this sudden demand for international legal and compliance firms. Okay, so we've laid out the risk. The next logical question is, what do you do about it? How do you protect your assets? Let's look at some immediate defensive moves that analysts are talking about. So, the key here is to be proactive. The folks over at Investment Underground suggest a pretty clear three-step playbook. First, maybe pull back on your exposure to Colombian government bonds for a bit, at least until things calm down. Second, hedge that risk. You could do that with regional ETFs, those are exchange-traded funds, to spread your risk beyond just Colombia, or you could use currency options to protect yourself if the peso takes a dive. And third, keep a really close eye on those defense contractors with ties to the region. Their stock could be in for a rough ride. All right, we've covered defense. Now let's switch gears and go on the offense. Because every crisis creates disruption, and that disruption almost always creates new, long-term opportunities if you know where to look. And this right here is the absolute heart of the matter. As this 70-year bond with the U.S. starts to break, it's pretty unlikely that Colombia is just going to go it alone. Analysts are watching like hawks to see if President Petro pivots toward new global partners. And the two big names that keep coming up, China and Russia. A move like that would fundamentally redraw the country's economic and security map. So this potential realignment actually opens the door to three really interesting long-term investment ideas. First, keep an eye out for new trade deals or tech partnerships between Colombia and China or Russia. Second, look at the rise of legal tech.
We're talking about startups that build software to help companies deal with the incredibly messy world of international sanctions. And finally, there's commodity arbitrage. Now, this one's a bit more advanced, but it means looking for price dislocations in Colombia's key exports, things like coffee, oil, and gold, that might pop up because of all this instability.
So, after we've broken all this down, the history, the risk, the opportunities, what's the big takeaway? What's the next move on the global chessboard?
And really, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What we're seeing isn't just one country's political drama. This is a major test of U.S. influence in its own hemisphere and a potential golden opportunity for its global rivals. How this all plays out could set a powerful precedent, one that could reshape alliances, investment flows, and the entire balance of power in Latin America for years, maybe even decades to come.